And as a young person, if you show up and ask and want to be engaged, you raise that hand, nobody's going to tell you no. They are going to put you in a leadership role.
People often ask, how do you end up becoming a president? And I'm sure you have a similar response, President Duvall, and that is you don't stop raising your hand, and they keep calling on you. So, it's been a great adventure.
Welcome back to Farmside Chat. This is Zippy Duvall, President of American Farm Bureau. I'm your host today, and we'll be talking about California agriculture with several topics around trade, leadership, immigration, how it's affecting farmers there. We're going to start out the conversation this morning in the north with Jamie Johansson, who is the president of California Farm Bureau. He's an olive grower from the northern part of the state. And then we'll end up our conversation talking to Jenny Holtermann, who is a part of our POW program, a leadership development program. She grows almonds in the southern part of the state. So hang on tight and let's travel from the north part of the state to the south part of the state and learn a little bit about the greatest agricultural state in our country, California. Jamie, thank you for joining us over the phone from the other side of the country. I'm in D.C. this morning, and you're all the way out in California, and I'd like to give you an opportunity to tell the people that are listening a little bit about yourself and your farm and how you become a farmer in California.
Yeah, well, thanks, President Duvall. Our headquarters out here at the California Farm Bureau are in Sacramento, so it is about an hour and 10 commute from my farm. It's about an hour north of Sacramento up in the foothills. I kind of came about farming in like most people, and that was growing up around it, though my family wasn't in agriculture. I grew up in a rural coastal town in Humboldt County, so a lot of my friends were dairy farmers and beef ranchers, so I spent a lot of summers and holidays working for them. And really, secretly had a dream to become a farmer, but not really knowing how you did that. And this was, in the late 80s and everything, but had an opportunity, went to Colorado State, and then came back home and had an opportunity to start an olive farm in Oroville. So more in the Sacramento Valley, so a long way from the ocean, but started farming olives and quickly realized that it's tough for a small farmer to make it out there when you're just selling a product on a commodity basis, just in terms of pricing that. So we created an olive oil company. There was really about 10 of us in, the early 90s trying to do olive oil. So we vertically integrated our olives up to an olive oil, created our own label, and just really been a lot of hard work and a lot of weekends and late nights farming and selling olive oil. And as I would go back to Humboldt County and see old friends and everything, and certainly the farmers that I had worked with, I had one particular farmer, a dairy farmer, came up to me and said, I heard you started a farm, and he didn't congratulate me, which I thought was odd at the time, but now I understand because he knew what a lot of work it would be. But he said that I also owed it to the industry to give back, and that was to be engaged in ensuring that regulations that happen in California, or the voice of the farmer is heard in California and our concerns. And so he told me to go home and join California Farm Bureau. So an individual I looked up to. And so followed his advice and just kind of got involved in the Young Farmer Rancher program and just kind of grew from there to being the president now. People often ask, how do you end up becoming a president? And I'm sure you have a similar response, President Duvall, and that is you don't stop raising your hand and they keep calling on you. So, it's been a great adventure. And certainly, for any beginning farmer out there, if it wasn't for the effort of our Farm Bureau members, in the past 100 years to create these opportunities for us, I certainly wouldn't be in farming.
Well, I'm sure you had the same comfort that when you found Farm Bureau, you found an outlet for your passion and your desire to make things better. And the way to do that was through policies in our local, state, and federal government to make our futures brighter. And I'm sure you found a place where you felt comfortable like I did.
I like to say there's nothing new under the sun. So we've all faced challenges in agriculture since, the first time someone turned the earth. But, the biggest frustration is when you feel like you're not being heard, or you have, concerns that you don't think are being met. And Farm Bureau really gives you that opportunity. And what's unique about Farm Bureau really is you don't have to be in D.C. to make a difference. You can make a difference at the county level, and that's where everything starts for Farm Bureau, whether it's our own policy book, but that's really the voices that we listen to. So just going to your county meeting really was an opportunity to be heard, and more importantly, too, to understand kind of how the decision-making process happens and how we all work together in agriculture. And certainly, we have our commodity groups, but it's when we're all in the room kind of talking things through that we can make really all of agriculture, try to make them all of us successful.
Yeah, I totally agree with that because, there's a few farmers out there that think that they can fly to Washington and see their congressman or call him up and, be heard. But really and truly, when you come together with all our voices together, that's when you bring the power and strength of our large organization and all the farmers agreeing on one policy book. That's where the strength is, and it all comes from that county, and like you said. But to talk about policy a little bit, I wanted to touch on USMCA and how important it is to the American farmer, the United States-Mexican-Canada Agreement, which is the modernization of the old NAFTA that we knew of that been in effect for years and years and years and had added billions of dollars to our farm exports. And would just love to hear a California perspective about that.
Yeah, I think it was a kind of an uneasy time as this administration was really challenging rewriting NAFTA. And I'll admit we didn't want to go down that road, and we were asking the administration, if you go down there, keep agriculture whole, like don't mess up a good thing, because it has been very successful for California. In fact, since NAFTA started in the early 90s, we've seen our exports at least triple in the fresh fruits and vegetables and nut sector to Mexico and Canada. So, there was a lot of fear in losing those markets, and those are our neighbors. And, we talk about USMCA and getting it passed now. It'll be important because it will send a strong message around the globe that we can trade, we can get along and work with our neighbors. I think it's going to be successful for us. We look forward to going back and reclaiming some of those markets we lost with these tariff disputes going on with Canada and Mexico. It's estimated that with all these tariffs and trade disputes going on, we're losing about $2.5 billion a year in California agricultural exports. So Mexico and Canada is certainly high. Canada is our second largest trading partner. We do about a little over $3 billion trade with Canada, and then Mexico is about $1 billion worth of trade that we do with them. So extremely important markets. Mexico, particularly for dairy products, about 40% of everything we export out of California to Mexico is a dairy product. So look forward to building those markets back up and doing something for our dairy folks who really, across this country really are hurting right now and need those additional markets.
40% of your dairy products that you export goes to Mexico.
Yeah, I'll clarify. 40%. We do about $1 billion worth of agricultural exports to Mexico. 40% of what we export agriculturally to Mexico is a dairy product. So 40% of that $1 billion trade. USMCA is a huge deal for our dairy farmers, and we owe it to them to give them all the help we can give them right now. As hard as these tariff disputes have been, it really has been an opportunity for us in agriculture, particularly California agriculture, to highlight how important agriculture is in the export markets and the jobs it creates. We have a shipping container port in Oakland. A shipping container port would be more of your specialty produce, so it's not your bulk shipment of grains and everything like you see up in Washington. It's the fifth largest container shipping port in the United States, and 60% of what they export out of that port is an agricultural product. And those ports will tell you, those port jobs, those trucking jobs, and across the country, that port supports around 800,000 jobs around the country. And that's 60% of what they're exporting is agriculture. So our export markets are extremely important to our economy in California, and nearly half of what we produce in California has to go to an export market.
Well, we see the same evidence of how important exporting and all the jobs it creates in Georgia, even with one of the largest exporting facilities on the eastern seaboard. So we feel the same encouragement in our state about what ag does in those same areas that you're talking about. Jamie, as we talk, whether they're a farmer or not. I mean, what's the best way through our farm bureaus for people to get involved and be able to make a difference on these issues and others?
Well, I think one of it is what we kind of started this conversation with that Farm Bureau is so good at, and that's exercising your voice. You as the President of the American Farm Bureau and myself as President of California, we need to hear these stories of how labor shortages are affecting their farms. And, we put out a survey 2 years ago on the labor shortage, and we put it out, about 6 months ago, 2 years later. And, we saw that still around, 60%, 55% of our members were saying they had a labor shortage. Hadn't changed much in 2 years. Maybe it went up about 1%. But what dramatically changed was the other answers on that survey, which was, how is your farm dealing with a labor shortage? And really some pretty amazing, and scary results, which was one of them, our farmers, 40% said they are changing what they are farming. So they're going to a more mechanized, product that they're creating, that they're growing. So in California, a lot of times that means nuts. So you get out of the produce and the row crops, and you plant nut trees, which are for the most part mechanically harvested. The other scary situation too, that really kind of breaks your heart is, the thought of getting out of farming, and a significant increase in the number of farmers who thought that they probably wouldn't see the next generation farm because simply there wouldn't be enough labor. So those are the things behind the scenes.
As a farmer, Jamie, you talking about those two movements, it'd be just as hard for me to change what I produce as it would to decide to quit. Would you agree with that? And tremendous cost. And you probably, to put in a nut or, a vineyard or whatever that could be mechanically harvested, you're looking at around $10,000 an acre probably in cost. So the thing is, that's a decision you're going to make for the next generation, because you probably, depending on your age and where you're at, probably be the next generation that finally pays it off and sees the benefit of it. So it is a dramatic change on the farm, just to change what you're growing. People that are listening to us is not growing commodities or not connected to agriculture. It's a very personal thing to us that what we do, we're proud of what we do, and you grow up, being a dairyman. It's just hard to make a transition to a different crop, or whether you become a grow crop farmer. It's hard to make it because it takes a lifetime to learn the business that you've been involved in. And every commodity exists as a business in its own, and it's not just agriculture. It's what you grew up learning how to do, what you went to school and learned about. And we hold some of those values all of us share together, whether it be use of water and taking care of the environment. We all share those things together, but as an individual crop, there's individual experience and talent that we all learn as we grow up and do that.
Another aspect that people forget as well is that, the person the farm that it hits the hardest is the small and medium-sized farm in terms of making those changes on the farm and changing your cropping patterns or going to mechanization, because we forget that there comes into play the scale of economy. I can tell you is that we hand harvest all our olives for olive oil. There is an olive variety out there that you can plant that can mechanically harvest. To make that feasible, really, in terms of the machinery needed and really the scale of economy to work for you in a mechanized olive production orchard, it really is around 250 acres. And so if your farm simply isn't large enough to carry the economic cost of being mechanized and all that machinery, it really squeezes the small farmer and the medium-sized farmer. And I think that's one of the frustrations is as we go out there and tell the story about how we need, we want to have, a diverse agricultural community out there, big farmers, large and small farmers and medium-sized farmers. It really will be the small and medium-sized farmers that'll feel the pinch in a labor crisis like we're having now.
That's exactly right. And, as we do surveys, we find out that the general public just loves a farmer, but they don't trust agriculture, and they view that as being big and large. And you're exactly right. The scale of economies is what drives us to be large. I didn't milk 300 cows because I wanted to milk 300 cows. The happiest time of my life was when I was milking 100 and my sons were in the barn with me and my wife, and and then you get 300 and you have to have employees that are there all the time, and it just changes everything, and it changes your life. And it's not because you want to be bigger, it's because you have to be bigger to make a living for your family. So a lot of people just don't really understand that and wish there was a way that we can let everybody know that. Jamie, I really enjoyed our conversation today, and we appreciate your leadership. You do a great job. You have a great team there at California Farm Bureau, and we look forward to continuing to work together to make sure that our farmers' voices all across America and every little community is heard.
Well, it's a great partnership between all the states and your organization, American Farm Bureau, and our county farm bureau. So we'll keep we're pretty confident we can keep America farming for the next 100 years, Zippy. So thank you very much.
So here on Farmside Chat, we had a great conversation with Jamie Johansson, who's president of California Farm Bureau, and got his perspective on some really good issues. But I'd like to take this conversation on out into farmland across California and talk to Jenny Holtermann, who is a almond grower there. And I want to welcome you, Jenny, and like for you to tell us a little bit about your farm and where you're from, what y'all do.
Yes, well, thank you for having me, first off. So we farm almonds in Wasco and Shafter, which is in Kern County, the southern end of the Central Valley in California. But I am a fourth-generation farmer as well as my husband. I did not grow up in this part of California. I grew up in Northern California in a town called Chico. My family farmed almonds and walnuts up there. So I say I'm bilingual in California, that I can say almond and almond. It's a big debate across the state what you say. So I grew up farming almonds and walnuts, and then married a farmer from the southern end of the valley, and we farm almonds with his family. So he's also a fourth generation farmer, and my husband and I farm with his father and brother and then their families. And we strictly just farm almonds. That's it.
So when you start talking about being in the north part of the state and now you're in the southern part of the Central Valley, how big of a space is that? How many miles apart?
Well, the whole valley is probably a little over 400 miles away, apart from end to end. So it takes us about 6 hours to get up to the Chico area. And that's pretty much the extent of where almonds are grown. It's pretty much from that Chico area all the way down to Bakersfield, where I am. They're grown across that whole valley. So you can imagine, and throughout that valley, there's various different soil types, various different climate and weather patterns. So they're grown throughout the whole valley, but the production and the yield varies throughout the whole valley as well, along with water availability through our state. It rains much more in Northern California. Where I am, we've had many years of drought historically in the recent years, and we still, our average rainfall is quite low. I think our average rainfall is about 6 inches a year, and we typically don't get that. In the last probably 10 years, we haven't received that. So it's very different farming and cultural practices, even though we are farming the same crop.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And in comparison to the state I come from in Georgia, we're the same way. It's about the same stretch from northern Georgia to south Georgia, and a lot of differences in the soil. Most of North Georgia is animal agriculture, not just about all of agriculture. And South Georgia is row crop, and of course everybody knows about the Georgia peanut and cotton down there. So, but it's interesting to see within a state how different agriculture can be in the faces and the techniques of how we farm and how they change. And I hear from you that California is no different than that. So from a farmer perspective, tell us your take on USMCA and how does that affect you and your farm there, and and how strong do you feel about getting the passage of USMCA?
USMCA is a very important tool for marketing our product, but not just our product, but all of California's products. Almonds specifically, Canada and Mexico combined is about it's our fifth largest trade market. And almonds trade about, I think it's $330 million worth of product into Canada and Mexico. So it's a pretty large market. And it's a recent market into Mexico. So that's something that I think with the USMCA is really important to continue that relationship. We've historically had good trade with Canada, and Mexico being such a new trade market for us. It would be really obviously detrimental if we lost that. It takes a long time to establish trade markets, and they can be ruined overnight, but it takes a long time to establish that, and you don't want to lose that momentum once you have it.
Let's talk about the labor a little bit in your community or on your farm. Can you describe what that labor force looks like, and do you see shortages around you?
Our labor across California, and specifically in our valley where we are, is predominantly from Mexico. We are getting Mexico and some South American workforce up here, and it is scarce. That population of our workforce is an aging population, as just like the farmer is. So it's we need those younger people that want to do that work, and that generation that's here, that's aging, their children have way more opportunities than they were given, and they don't necessarily want to do that field labor work. They would rather, go off and further their education, which is phenomenal. I applaud them for having those opportunities, but we're losing the younger workforce to be able to come up and help us with field labor. So we are in need of more. And that's why I think it's important, with the labor and immigration discussions to include, help with getting more legal workforce here. We use a lot of labor contractors where we are, because it is a lot of seasonal work where we need a lot of people during harvest and then during pruning times of year, but where we may not, need that many people throughout the whole year. So we definitely need that flexibility and that help with getting people here seasonally, as well as, they can travel throughout the state and be able to help out with the various different crops that are being harvested and needing more of a workforce throughout their times of the year. So it's definitely a scarce thing when we ask for crews of 30 to 40 people. Sometimes maybe we'll get 12 instead, because there's just not enough people to do the job here. If we had a track for them to follow to come into California legally, I think that would be really helpful. And then, as well as, obviously there are people here illegally as well. We need to be able to provide a means for them to stay here and work, and some means for them to continue working and here as well.
Yeah, those ones that are been around for a long time and are undocumented, they're our most experienced workers, and they're very valuable to our communities and our farms, and a lot of people don't understand that. So thank you for talking about that.
They are.
So what do you love best about farming?
Oh gosh, I mean, so much. Besides from all the issues and hardships that we face, I love that it's a family business. I grew up watching my dad and my uncles and my grandpa, all farm together, and that sense of unity and pride in what you have is just so remarkable. And then having the opportunity to be able to farm us here as our family and with my father-in-law and brother-in-law is just great. And we have the next generation. I have 2 kids, and my my brother and sister-in-law have 2 children. So to have the 4 kids on the farm, every day, being able to watch us, work for what we have. And it's a great community that agriculture has. And it really just creates those core family values of hard work and that you really get to see your hard work play out too. And when you harvest, that's what we wait all year for, is that, and to really be able to see, your efforts pay out. I think that's phenomenal. And I hope that, someday we have a farm. If our children and niece and nephew want to take it over, I hope it's there for them so they can continue that family legacy as well.
Boy, I tell you, no one could describe it any better than you just did. I think every farmer across America feels that love for agriculture or for farming like that. So what brought you to Farm Bureau, and what could you say to young people that's listening to us today to encourage them to be part of our Farm Bureau family?
Yeah, it's just that. It really is a family. My family was Farm Bureau members growing up, so I was able to see the benefits, and it helped me connect with people as well. Moving to a different area of the state that I wasn't familiar with, the first thing I did was reach out to Farm Bureau and get involved in young farmers and ranchers, because that was, what helped me, gain more friends and realize, what are the challenges and what are people doing farming here that really they are passionate about. And, through that, I was able to chair our California Young Farmers and Ranchers last year. I'm now on our California Farm Bureau Board of Directors and a participant of the PAL class this year. So, it's that sense of community that you make all around. So if you are there and you volunteer time, you are going to learn what other people are, what their struggles are, and what their passion is all about. And that really has helped me as a farmer to better gauge, your sense of community, and you gain those relationships with other people because you share in those same values. And Farm Bureau has definitely helped us, in various different issues that farming has had in California. Whenever there is a hot issue that is going to affect farmers, Farm Bureau always stands up and helps us combat that and figure out how we are going to face those issues. So Farm Bureau really is a family, and they are going to be there to support you. And as a young person, if you show up and ask and want to be engaged, you raise that hand, nobody's going to tell you no. They are going to put you in a leadership role, and you will quickly learn if you don't know how to say no, you are going to be volunteered for everything. Because they support you and they want what's best for you. And if you are a leader, they are going to ensure that you strive.
Well, as a leader of the national organization, one of the things I work for is to prepare this organization for the future. And the best way to do that is to invest time in young leaders like you. And Jenny, you are awesome, just an awesome young leader. We're just so proud of you being part of the Farm Bureau family. Proud of what you and your family's doing out there in California, and I want to thank you for taking time to be part of the Farmside Chat today.
Yes, thank you for having me.
I want to thank you for joining us today on Farmside Chat. Hope you enjoyed our conversation with Jamie Johansson from North California. He's president of California Farm Bureau. And then also from the south part of that great state, Jenny Holtermann, who's a young farmer down in the southern part of the state. I hope you subscribe to our podcast and go online and leave us some comments. We'd love to hear from you and maybe hear about some topics you'd like for us to discuss in the future. Until later, God bless you.